Before we begin this journey, I want you to imagine something with me. Picture yourself sitting across from me, just the two of us, talking honestly, without filters, without pretending everything is fine. Because today, we are stepping into a story that most people have heard pieces of, but very few truly understand. And once you hear what really happened to the 12 apostles of Jesus, you might never look at faith, courage, or sacrifice the same way again. People often talk about the apostles like they were untouchable heroes, carved out of stone, standing confidently beside Jesus without fear or doubt. But the truth is much more raw and much more human. These were ordinary men who encountered something extraordinary, something so powerful that it changed the entire direction of their lives. And what happened to them after Jesus left this world is not something most churches talk about on Sunday morning. What you are about to hear is intense, uncomfortable, and absolutely eye-opening. Because the end of the apostles was not poetic. It was not glamorous, and it was definitely not easy. It was tragic. And at the same time, their stories carry a kind of strength that you can feel deeply if you allow yourself to. Maybe you clicked on this video because you have always wondered what happened to the men who walked beside Jesus. Maybe you carry questions about faith or about your own life that no one around you seems to understand. Or maybe, without even noticing, you are longing for something real, something that cuts through the noise and reaches your soul. If that is you, then you are exactly where you need to be right now. Because nothing here is sugar-coated. Nothing is exaggerated. Everything is grounded in historical records, early church writings, and the legacy that survived 2,000 years. And when you hear the end of each apostle, you will understand why their message spread with such force and why millions still hold on to their testimony today. Here is the thing. Most people know the apostles lived for Jesus, but very few know how they died for him. And it is there, in the final chapter of their lives, that we discover the truth about what kept them going. Not comfort, not rewards, not status, but conviction. A conviction so deep that not even fear, torture, or death could break it. And I want you to keep something in mind as we walk through their stories. No one willingly suffers or dies for a lie. No one holds on when everything inside them says to run. Yet these men did, and that tells us something profound about the reality they witnessed. But before we go apostle by apostle, let us talk about why these stories matter to you right now. Because this is not just history. This is a mirror. A mirror that reflects our own struggles, our doubts, our fears, and our search for meaning. Maybe you feel overwhelmed by life. Maybe you feel spiritually tired or emotionally drained. Or maybe you have been carrying questions you have been afraid to ask. You are not alone in that. Believe it or not, the apostles felt exactly the same at different moments. But something happened to them that changed everything from the inside out. And when we understand what shaped their courage, we begin to understand what can shape ours. So here is my invitation. Stay with me through this entire journey. Let yourself feel the weight of their stories. Let yourself imagine the places they walked, the choices they made, and the price they paid. Because by the end of this video, something inside you will shift. Maybe you will feel clarity, maybe strength, maybe conviction, or maybe questions you were afraid to face. But one thing is certain, you will not walk away the same. Now, let us begin where everything started, with 12 ordinary men called into an extraordinary mission. 12 men who left everything behind to follow Jesus. 12 men whose lives were transformed forever. And 12 men whose final chapters reveal the cost and the beauty of a faith lived with everything they had. In this first part, we will explore the beginning of their mission, their personalities, their weaknesses, and what made them so uniquely chosen. Because to understand the weight of their endings, we must first understand the hearts behind their beginnings. And trust me, the more you learn about who they truly were, the more powerful their final moments will become. Let us start with Peter, the fisherman whose heart was bigger than his fear. Then we move to Andrew, quiet but relentless. And then James and John, brothers shaped by fire but softened by love. Each of them carrying a story that still echoes in the world today. Prepare yourself, this journey is about to get intense. Let us begin with Peter, the apostle most people recognize instantly. Not because he was perfect or unshakable, but because he was unmistakably human. Peter was impulsive, emotional, and often spoke before thinking. He was the kind of person who would jump into the water before noticing the storm. And maybe that is why so many people relate to him. He made mistakes as loudly as he made promises, but his heart was sincere. And Jesus saw something in him that went deeper than his failures. Peter witnessed miracles, walked on water for a moment, and experienced the shame of denying Jesus. But after the resurrection, something inside him changed forever. Peter became a pillar of the early church, preaching with a boldness that shocked even his enemies. His life shows us that God uses imperfect people to carry powerful missions. Now, let us talk about what happened to him at the end. Peter was arrested in Rome under Emperor Nero during a time when Christians were being hunted and blamed for disasters. Historical accounts from early Christian writers describe how Peter refused to renounce his faith, even when threatened with death. And when the time came, he made one final request. He asked to be crucified upside down because he felt unworthy to die in the same way Jesus did. Imagine the courage it takes to face something like that and still make a request based on humility. Peter's ending reveals how deeply transformed he had become. The man who once ran from fear ended as someone who could not be broken by it. Next, we have Andrew, Peter's brother. While Peter's personality was loud and bold, Andrew was quieter, more observant, the kind of person who noticed others. He was actually the first disciple Jesus called. Andrew had a heart for bringing people to Jesus. He brought Peter to him. He brought the boy with the fishes and loaves. He had a gentle but powerful impact. After the resurrection, Andrew traveled far, preaching in regions like Greece and Asia Minor. His mission was steady and constant. But his death, like so many others, was brutal. Andrew was sentenced to die on a cross as well, but this one was shaped differently, more like an X. Historical accounts say he hung there for 2 days, still speaking about Jesus to those who passed by. 2 days in pain, yet using every breath to strengthen someone else's faith. That kind of endurance shows the depth of his conviction. He believed in what he preached, even when his body was giving out. Then we move to James, the son of Zebedee, brother of John. James had a passionate personality, sometimes intense to the point of being overwhelming. Jesus once called him and his brother the sons of thunder, and that tells you a lot. But instead of rejecting that intensity, Jesus directed it toward purpose. James became one of the main leaders among the apostles. He was present at key moments like the Transfiguration and the raising of Jairus' daughter. He had a front row seat to miracles that shaped the early faith. His death marks something unique. James was the first apostle to be martyred. The book of Acts records that he was executed by the sword under King Herod. This moment shocked the early church. They were still adjusting to their mission, still learning, still organizing. And suddenly, one of their strongest voices was taken away. But this tragedy didn't weaken them. It did the opposite. It strengthened their resolve. Sometimes, loss has a way of revealing what truly matters. Now John, James's brother, is different from all the others. John lived longer than any other apostle, And his end was not through execution. John was deeply close to Jesus. He is the one referred to as the disciple Jesus loved, which speaks more about intimacy than favoritism. John was gentle but strong, emotional but deeply grounded. He wrote the Gospel of John, 3 letters, and the book of Revelation. His writings help us understand not just what Jesus did, but who Jesus is. This is why so many theologians call him the Apostle of Love. But John also suffered. He was arrested, beaten, and eventually exiled to the island of Patmos. Isolation was a punishment meant to break the mind. Yet it was there, in that loneliness, that he received one of the most powerful revelations in the Bible. While others faced death through violence, John faced a different kind of death: separation, living far from everything he knew, yet still holding on to his faith. His ending shows us that sometimes the hardest battles are fought in silence. When we put these first 4 apostles side by side, we start to see a picture forming. Their endings were different, but their purpose was unified. Peter's courage, Andrew's persistence, James's passion, and John's endurance reveal the wide range of ways God works through people. Not everyone will face the same struggles. Not everyone will walk the same path. But each life holds a testimony that can shape others long after it ends. Now let us turn to Philip, a man who often gets overlooked, yet his role in the early church was incredibly important. Philip was practical, logical, and thoughtful. He was the type of person who asked questions not because he doubted, but because he wanted clarity. He appears several times in the Gospels, initiating conversations that lead to deeper understanding. After the resurrection, Philip traveled through regions like Phrygia, preaching with intensity and compassion. Historical records describe how he confronted spiritual darkness wherever he went, often helping entire communities break free from practices that enslaved them emotionally and spiritually. His tragic end came in the city of Hierapolis, where he was crucified after challenging a powerful pagan cult. Witnesses say he continued speaking words of hope even as he suffered, turning his final moments into a message of courage. Then we move to Bartholomew, also known as Nathanael. His story is both beautiful and painful. When Jesus first met him, he described Bartholomew as a man without deceit, someone sincere to the core. This honesty shaped his entire ministry. After Jesus ascended, Bartholomew traveled further than most apostles, reaching regions like Arabia, Mesopotamia, and India. His teaching spread quickly because people trusted his authenticity. But his ending is one of the most brutal in early Christian history. Multiple accounts suggest he was flayed alive, meaning his skin was removed while he was still alive. It is difficult to even imagine the pain. But through all of it, he refused to renounce his faith. Bartholomew's story reveals a powerful truth. A sincere heart creates unshakable conviction. Now, let us talk about Thomas, often remembered for doubting, even though his faith later became one of the strongest among the apostles. People forget that Thomas was the first one to say he was willing to die with Jesus when danger approached. His doubt after the resurrection was not rebellion, but anguish. When he finally saw Jesus and touched his wounds, Thomas made one of the most profound declarations in the New Testament: "My Lord and my God." That moment transformed him completely. After that, he traveled further east than any of the others, bringing the message of Jesus to India. To this day, there are Christian communities there, tracing their roots back to him. Thomas was eventually martyred by being pierced with spears. The man who once needed proof became someone whose life became proof to others. His journey reminds us that God can turn our deepest questions into our greatest strength. Next comes Matthew, the tax collector turned disciple. Before following Jesus, Matthew lived a life deeply disliked by his own people. Tax collectors were seen as traitors, greedy and corrupt. But when Jesus called him, Matthew left everything instantly. No hesitation. His transformation was dramatic. He used his skills as a writer and thinker to record one of the most detailed accounts of Jesus' life, the Gospel of Matthew. After the resurrection, he preached in regions like Ethiopia and Persia. His death is described in early traditions as a martyrdom involving either stabbing or burning, depending on the region. What matters most is this: a man once hated and rejected became a messenger of hope. Matthew's life proves that no past is too dark for God to rewrite. Now we have James, the son of Alphaeus. He is sometimes called James the Less, not because he was less important, but because he was younger or smaller in stature. James lived quietly compared to the louder apostles, but he was consistent, loyal, and deeply committed. Early Christian sources describe him as a man of prayer who lived a humble life. His tragic death came when he was thrown from the pinnacle of the temple in Jerusalem. When the fall didn't kill him, he was beaten until he died. Imagine the strength of someone who continues to breathe after such a fall. His dedication in life and endurance in death show how God uses even the quietest people to create lasting impact. Now comes Jude, also known as Thaddeus. Jude had a tender personality, but carried a powerful message. He wrote the short but strong letter known as the Book of Jude, warning early believers about deception and encouraging them to stay strong in the faith. After the resurrection, Jude traveled through regions like Syria and Mesopotamia, preaching boldly. His death came through execution with a club or axe, depending on the historical source. Jude's story teaches us something essential. Even a soft heart can carry a fierce mission. Finally, we reach Simon the Zealot, a man whose background is striking. Zealots were known for being intensely nationalistic, sometimes even violent, fighting against Roman oppression. Yet Jesus transformed Simon's passion into purpose. Instead of fighting earthly battles, Simon learned to fight spiritual ones. After the resurrection, he traveled widely, possibly reaching places like Egypt, Libya, and Persia. His death is recorded as a martyrdom that involved being sawed in half. It is almost unbearable to picture. But Simon's transformation shows how God can take even our most intense traits and redirect them towards something holy. When you look at these apostles together, you start noticing a pattern. They were all different. Different backgrounds, different temperaments, different strengths and weaknesses. And yet they all reached the same conclusion. Jesus was worth everything. Their final moments were brutal, but they reveal a depth of belief that still challenges us today. They didn't die because they wanted to be heroes. They died because they refused to deny what they had seen with their own eyes. Now we reach one of the most difficult and complex figures among the apostles, Judas Iscariot. His name alone brings a shiver to people who know the story, because Judas represents the painful reminder that even those closest to Jesus can lose their way. He was chosen, just like the others. He walked beside Jesus, saw the miracles, heard every teaching, witnessed compassion that could melt even the hardest heart. And yet, something inside him remained divided. Judas struggled with greed, with expectations that Jesus did not meet, and with desires that pulled him in the opposite direction of faith. It wasn't one single moment that destroyed him. It was a gradual drifting, a slow surrender to temptation. When Judas agreed to betray Jesus for 30 pieces of silver, he likely didn't imagine the consequences would unfold the way they did. Maybe he expected Jesus to resist, to overthrow the authorities, to manifest his power in a political way. But when he saw Jesus arrested and condemned, the weight of what he had done crushed him. Judas tried to return the money, desperate to undo what had already been set in motion. But guilt without repentance can become unbearable. And in that unbearable despair, Judas took his own life. His ending is tragic, not because of the method, but because of the heartbreak behind it. Judas shows us how dangerous it is when a person walks with Jesus externally, but refuses to surrender to him internally. His story is a warning, but also a mirror for anyone who has ever felt torn between two paths. Now that we have walked through the lives and deaths of all 12 apostles, something powerful begins to emerge. Their endings were not isolated tragedies. They were part of a greater pattern. These men didn't die because they chose violence. They didn't die because they were reckless. They died because they refused to abandon what they knew to be true. And that alone speaks louder than any sermon. Let us take a step back now and look at the bigger picture. Each apostle reveals a different dimension of humanity. Peter shows us how God restores the broken. Andrew shows the beauty of small, faithful steps. James reveals passion refined by purpose. John expresses faith through love and endurance. Philip teaches us to ask questions. Bartholomew teaches sincerity. Thomas teaches that doubt can become testimony. Matthew teaches that past failures don't define the future. James, son of Alphaeus, teaches the power of quiet obedience. Jude teaches the strength found in gentle but firm truth. Simon teaches how intensity becomes holiness. And Judas teaches the devastating cost of a divided heart. Together they form a mosaic, a complete picture of how God works through every type of person. None of them were perfect. None of them were the obvious choice for greatness. They were fishermen, tax collectors, skeptics, revolutionaries, quiet men, and impulsive men. People with real struggles. People who knew what it meant to be afraid. And yet, they became the foundation of a movement that changed the world. When historians study the early church, one conclusion stands out. People don't willingly die brutal deaths for something they doubt. The apostles died because they had seen something undeniable, something worth living for and worth dying for. But let us bring this closer to you, because this video is not meant to be a history lesson. It is meant to touch your heart where you are right now. Maybe you are dealing with exhaustion, not just physical exhaustion, but the kind of weariness that sits deep in your soul. Perhaps you are carrying wounds no one else sees, or you are facing battles that make you question your own strength. Maybe you are searching for clarity or longing for a sign that you are not walking alone. The apostles show us that God does not choose perfect people. He chooses willing people. People who are broken, tired, confused, and sometimes even scared. But once they encounter truth, that truth becomes an anchor stronger than fear. The stories of the apostles remind us that faith is not just about believing something. It's about experiencing something. They didn't follow Jesus because they were looking for a religion. They followed him because he changed everything inside them. And that same transformation is available to you. The same Jesus who walked beside them walks beside you even now. Their courage is meant to strengthen yours. Their endurance is meant to encourage yours. Their failures are meant to remind you that you are not disqualified. Now, there is something else we must acknowledge. The early church did not grow because of comfort or convenience. It grew through sacrifice, conviction, and love. The apostles suffered, but their suffering produced something eternal. And sometimes in our own lives, the moments that hurt the most become the moments that shape us the most. Sometimes the final chapters that feel tragic are actually the ones that reveal what matters most. As we move into the final part of this script, I want you to pay attention to what has been stirring inside you during this journey. Maybe a sense of courage, maybe a sense of calling, Maybe a realization that you have been drifting and need to come back. Maybe a reminder that you are not alone, even when you feel you are. The apostles didn't just leave us stories. They left us a path, a map, a testimony of what faith can look like when lived fully. Now that we have walked through the lives and the tragic endings of each of the 12 apostles, there is something important we need to do. We need to pause for a moment and see all of this not simply as historical information, but as a message that carries weight, purpose, and a deeply personal meaning. Because what these men lived and what they endured was not just the beginning of Christianity. It was the birth of a faith carried on the shoulders of ordinary people whose courage still echoes today. When you put all their stories together, something powerful becomes clear. The apostles were not superheroes. They did not walk through life untouched by fear or doubt. They were human in every sense of the word. They felt exhaustion. They felt pain. They faced uncertainty. Yet each one of them discovered something so real in Jesus that they chose to stand firm even when the world pushed back with brutality. Their endings were tragic, yes, but their faith was unbreakable. And that combination is what continues to inspire millions across generations. Think about Peter, who failed loudly but loved deeply. Think about John, who survived isolation yet remained faithful. Think about Thomas, whose doubt turned into courage. Think about Bartholomew, whose sincerity led him to endure unimaginable suffering. Think about Matthew, who walked away from a life of corruption into the life of purpose. And even think about Judas, whose story warns us about the danger of holding back what should be surrendered. Each apostle teaches us something essential about the human heart. And maybe as you have been listening to these stories, something in you started to resonate. Maybe you began to see parts of yourself in them. Maybe you felt something stirring in your heart. A quiet pull, a reminder, a conviction. Because the truth is, these stories were never meant to simply inform you. They were meant to confront you, encourage you, and awaken something inside you. The apostles show us that God can work through anyone, at any stage, in any condition. He does not look for perfection. He looks for willingness. And that brings us to a very powerful realization. The apostles did not die for a philosophy. They did not die for a tradition. They did not die for a set of rules. They died for a person, someone they encountered so deeply that even death could not make them deny him. Historians often point out that people do not give their lives for something they know is false. The courage and consistency of the apostles is one of the clearest historical testimonies of the truth of Jesus' resurrection. And their deaths, as brutal as they were, continue to speak across centuries. But now let us bring this even closer to your life. Because maybe you are walking through something heavy right now. Maybe you feel spiritually tired or emotionally overwhelmed. Maybe there are prayers you feel God has not answered yet. Maybe there are battles you fight in silence that no one around you understands. Or maybe you are searching for meaning in the middle of confusion. Whatever you are facing, the message of the apostles is this: you are not alone. Your story has purpose, and your pain is not wasted. The apostles faced storms, prisons, beatings, and rejection. They faced moments where everything in them could have broken, yet something kept them standing. And that same strength, that same presence, that same Jesus can walk with you through your darkest moments. Faith does not remove the struggle, but it transforms how you face it. It gives you an anchor when everything else feels unstable. It gives you clarity when life becomes confusing. It gives you hope when circumstances seem hopeless. And perhaps that is why their story touches us so deeply. Because in the end, The apostles show us what a transformed life looks like. They show us what it means to live with conviction. They show us that even ordinary people can leave extraordinary impacts when they are connected to something greater than themselves. And that is the invitation for you today, to allow your faith to become more than just ideas, to allow it to become something living inside you, something that shapes your choices, strengthens your heart, and guides your steps. Before we close this journey, I want you to hold on to one truth. The gospel that transformed the apostles is the same gospel that can transform your life. The same Jesus that walked beside them walks beside you now. The same love that lifted them can lift you. The same purpose that guided them can guide you. And the same courage that carried them through their last moments can carry you through whatever you are facing. If this video touched your heart, if something inside you felt awakened or strengthened, let me know in the comments which apostle story spoke the most to you. Your feedback helps me understand what kind of content brings value to your life, so I can continue creating videos that feed your faith and deepen your understanding. And if you want me to create full videos about the life of Paul, Mary Magdalene, King David, or any other biblical figure, just say so. There are so many powerful stories waiting to be explored, and I would be honored to walk through them with you. Thank you for staying with me until the end of this journey. May the courage of the apostles remind you that even in tragedy, faith can shine. May their devotion strengthen your spirit, and may their legacy ignite something new inside your heart today. You are not walking alone.